Welcome to Post in Black, everyone. My name is David Hunter Jr., and I'm so excited to have you join us back at Post in Black. We are entering into our season 2 where we highlight Black excellence behind the lens, and we are so excited to have you with us because today our special guest is Daysha Broadway. Daysha is an editor. Her credits include TV shows such as Insecure, A Black Lady Sketch Show, 911, the Lena Waithe produced 20s, and Boomerang. She's a Peabody Award-winning editor. She's received 2 Emmy nominations for editing on the A&E show Born This Way. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but I'm just going to let Daysha talk a little bit about herself. Daysha, thank you for joining us today.
Hi, thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
It is our pleasure. It is our pleasure. Really appreciate your time today. And, you know, as accustomed to Post in Black, before we jump all the way into the interview and find out more about you, we always like to do an icebreaker. Does that sound okay with you?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Our icebreaker, it's going to come on the bottom for your screen, so you'll be able to see it here. Our icebreaker for you is, if you could bring back any fashion trend, what would it be?
I was a total tomboy. Like, I grew up in the 90s, and I remember like TLC's Hat to the Back was like my jam.
Yeah, okay.
I would bring back dressing like you really don't give a damn.
Yeah.
Like just overalls, backwards hat, just baggy, like a Looney Tunes shirt, like with Tasmanian Devil on it for no reason. I would bring that back immediately.
The Tasmanian Devil with the that's
when the Tasmanian Devil had like the baseball cap on and it was sideways. You were like, why? But I like it.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. That's fresh. Now, this isn't part of it. I mean, it can be, but what fashion trend would you like to see go away right now?
Really hate Crocs, and I hate that y'all are acting like this is a new cute thing. Like doctors should wear Crocs. No one else should wear Crocs. Stop it.
Come on. Come on.
I'm tired.
If you tired, I'm sleep because I cannot stand them things. It is going.
It's not cute. Don't put like little jewels in them. Don't paint them. Like, just throw them out. Throw them away.
No, I put a pair on and everybody's like, see, don't you see them? I said, you know what? I'm glad I didn't have to pay for them because that's my thing. That was my thing. God forbid, right? Well, we're already getting it going. You know, your energy is great. We're excited to have you here. Obviously, we talked about fashion a little bit, but tell us a little bit more. Like, fashion is different for everybody. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Compton.
Okay. The CPT, as they say.
CPT. It's like, not to age myself, but to age myself, it was like late 80s, early 90s. Like, lived through the riots, lived through a lot of weird, strange things that a kid probably shouldn't have to live through. Yeah. But yeah, I grew up in LA, Compton, South Central, went to school in Gardena, hung out in Watts, Inglewood. Like, that was my.
Yeah. You full South Central. You know, I'm not from LA. I have a lot of friends from LA, like Watts and, you know, the Crenshaw district area over there. Mm-hmm. And it's just very rare that you actually talk to people sometimes who are born and raised and have that background in the city. How has that affected you in terms of working in Hollywood with the people you come in contact with?
It is, it's strange because it's hard to find someone who's in the industry who's from LA. Like, it's sometimes you are looked at as like a unicorn, kind of. Yeah. But I feel like it was always different for people who grew up in LA. This wasn't as exciting and flashy. Mm-hmm. And like, you know, I was definitely supposed to be a nurse. I wasn't supposed to be have anything to do with film, but I think my mom saw that there was like this creative part of me that she was like, well, let's just see what happens. Okay. But yeah, I think because it was down the street and like growing up, I never went to Hollywood. Never drove to. It was gross, and I didn't want to go there. Downtown LA was not a safe place when I was growing up, so it's not a place. But now people like live there and like thrive there. So yeah, I think just the lure of it wasn't really there growing up. But I was obsessed with films and obsessed with television, and knew that editing was something that I really liked to do. And I just didn't know that you could do that for a living being from where I'm from, because I hadn't seen anyone do that before. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right. No, that's a good point. You touched on a few things. Obviously, being a transplant, I've lived in LA, you know, as I mentioned, like 10 plus years, 13 years now. I actually live 5 minutes from downtown. So I'm one of those people that live here now that's like, what's going on here? But even in my time of being here, I've seen it change. And so you talk about not having that experience, not even wanting to go there. What got you interested in wanting to be in film? And then actually, like, being in film, you know, people want to be actors, directors, and all this. But what got you interested in wanting to being an editor and working behind the scenes?
Yeah, that's what was interesting is I had seen all that. I had seen people from my community become actors and actresses usually. And that wasn't really, I was just not that, I didn't have that personality. I didn't have that like confidence, I think, that you have to have in yourself to just put yourself out there like that all the time. I think because I grew up in the 80s and 90s, I was like obsessed with Robert Zemeckis films and all the different like technical things he was doing with filmmaking. Like I think every movie he was doing was like pushing the boundaries of what you can do with technology, like with Back to the Future, but also with like Death Becomes Her. Like you blow a hole in Goldie Hawn's stomach, and I'm just like, how? Who Framed Roger Rabbit was like one of my favorite films, and I was constantly like, well, how did he get the animated characters with the real people? As a kid, just really like, how does this happen? So I was always like interested in the technical side of it, and I think that once I went to undergrad, I realized that I could sort of bond my creative knowledge, my technical knowledge with my creative side, and that was editing. There was things like I was watching City of God when I was in undergrad, and I think the movie The Hours had come out. And I was talking to one of my professors about the beginning sequence of The Hours and how smoothly all the match cuts were like putting this story together, but there was no dialogue. And I was just talking to him about it, and he was like, yeah, the editing in that is really great. And I was like, can you talk to me more about editing? And then we just started talking about it more and more and more. And then I started watching films looking for the editing, and I was like, I think I can do that. Like, and started trying from there.
You touched on a couple of points there. First off, you touched on how you saw something like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and you automatically went to the technical side. And my brother, as many people may know and hear me repeat, he's the one that started Post in Black. He has a background in editing and post-production and sound and all of that. And my background was in performance and acting. And so when I saw that same film, I'm looking at the way that the characters were talking and how the animated characters were talking, trying to mimic their voice. And so it's just very curious how both of our brains saw that and how we both went to different directions. It's really cool. And then in terms of you seeing, okay, you said something about the City of God, which is an excellent movie. If people haven't seen it, you need to see that film. But match cuts. Now, for someone that's watching Post in Black right now or listening to us on Spotify or wherever they're listening to it, what is a match cut? Because we may have people that know nothing about that. What is that?
Anyone who has TikTok knows what a match cut is now. I feel like people figured out what it was and went crazy on TikTok with it. But it's just a match of action, and you can change a person's environment without the viewer knowing, because you've matched on a certain action. So, you cut with someone turning around, and then you've cut to the reverse side of that, and now they're in a completely different space. And that's a match cut. And it happens a lot in City of God and a lot in the opening sequence of The Hours. And I was just, because in The Hours, they were telling a story from, I think, 4 different time periods. And they would get you from one time period to the next with just a match cut and with a different character. Like you would be with this person, now you're with Meryl Streep and moving forward. But yeah, that's what a match cut.
Now you said the match cut, and you asked, hey, can you tell me more about editing? What did he tell you? What did they tell you that made you say, okay, this is something I really want to go after even more?
Yeah, we started talking about, he asked me like what my favorite films were. And we talked about Poetic Justice. We talked about Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but Death Becomes Her. We talked about The First Wives Club. We started talking about comedies more. And he was like, well, what makes those movies funny to you? And I was like, well, it's the actors, but it's also just the timing of the jokes, I think. I was like, I think we started talking about Friday a little bit.
Yeah.
we're talking about how Chris Tucker is loud and hilarious and ridiculous. And then he was like, do you think he was always like that in the film? Like he's kind of talking to me like a therapist. Like he would ask me questions instead of just telling me what I need to know.
Right.
Trying to make me figure it out. And so he was just like, do you think he was always like that in the film? And I was like, well, he seemed at like a 10 all the time. And he was like, but an editor will choose takes to go against Ice Cube's more calm resolve. So Chris Tucker's here, but maybe there was a take where Chris Tucker was here, and then the director wanted him here. And so we started talking about choosing takes, pacing, and he was talking about how the reason why I think the first Wives Club is so funny is because I think Goldie Hawn is really funny. He was like, but also the way you cut away from Goldie Hawn after she tells a joke is what's funny. And so we started looking at scenes together. We would get together and look at scenes together, and we would start talking about comedy pacing. Okay. And then I just was like, okay, and that maybe this is like, I can do this. I was like, I can do this. I used to like film my friends in high school and then go back home and like edit it on my janky ass computer and like
really
like with like Sony Vegas, I think, or something like that. And I was doing that in high school already. And then sort of when we were talking, I sort of realized the part that I loved wasn't going out and shooting my friends. Like the part that I loved was coming back home and putting it together.
And that's a great distinction that you were able to make early on, because, you know, one thing is like sometimes people are going after something for so long and then they get there and they're like, man, this isn't what I wanted to do. So you were able to kind of figure that out early on. And then you had this conversation that kind of gave you more clarity. So you have the clarity, but now we're talking about a career and getting a job. How do you take clarity and, you know, get a job? You can have all that knowledge, but you can't just knock on somebody's door and say, hey, I want to edit. You know, how did you take that next leap, whether it was going to school or trying to choose or make relationships in the industry?
Well, it wasn't immediate. I was still nervous. I mean, okay. I graduated undergrad and then I took a year off to work at my godmother's paralegal firm. And then, yeah, I think I just got to the point where I was like, okay, if you want to do this, if you want to make money doing something you love and be happy, you really have to go for it. And I don't have like a safety net or anything. I was like, this is all going to be like student loans. This is going to be me broke and trying. So I started applying to grad schools, and I think I was like waitlisted at USC. And then I got into Dodge College at Chapman based on like a letter that I wrote that was like, you need me. Promise.
Oh, that's what you said in the letter? You told me?
I was like, yeah, my thing, I was like, look, this is my story. And I said something like, my transcript doesn't tell my story. Like, I need to tell you my story.
I mean, that's poetic right there.
Yeah, I was like, when I want to look at my grades, I was kind of a slacker, but I was like, but that don't have nothing to do with me. That was just, you know, the structure of that school didn't really fit me. I wasn't really great at going to school and going to class and getting great grades. And I'm not the valedictorian type person. Right. But I am hungry and I can do this job and I'm talented if you just give me a shot to do this. And I think I listed one of my favorite films as The Children's Hour. Okay. And the person who was reading it was like, what? And so then I got like an interview. So it was definitely like a moment where I didn't really know that this was what I was going to do. And then I just was like, you have to, because what else are you going to do? Yeah. And then there was no looking back. And then I graduated and literally applied to be an assistant editor after interning at Bravo. I was interning at Bravo. Okay. And then I was applying everywhere, and everyone was saying, you don't apply. It's about who you know. You can only get in through this person. I applied and I got a job. Yeah. Wow. And it's what you do with that job afterwards that's going to propel you. Yeah. You just have to get your foot in, I think.
And that's something that you talk about. And I want to, encourage, because the reason for Posting Black is to not only highlight, those who are working behind the scenes who look like you and I, but those who are working in high school or in college right now, and they don't really know what they want to do. They want to work in the film industry. They want to be a part of it, but they're saying, how do I get into it? It's like, first of all, you can take some time off to get some clarity if you want. You know, you don't have to jump right in. You don't have to make a decision right away. And then when you get that clarity, it's like, okay, go after it with all you have. And, you know, applying for internships, was it hard to even apply for the Bravo internship? You know, how did you find out about that even?
At my school, they had posted a couple of things. At one point, I went and worked for Scary Spice because they had posted that there was an assistant job available for her. And I was like, yes, I went and did that. But they had posted internships. Bravo was looking for people in their digital department. And that internship, I applied, I interviewed. I was like one of 3 people they interviewed. They hired 2 of us. They were looking for people from Chapman. I think because who was working there went to Chapman.
Okay, yeah. It
was like an alumni thing. And then I turned that internship into a per diem postgraduate job where I was cutting, and they were, you know, paying me per digital package that I cut for their website. And so I was just there and applying at the same time, knowing that that was just a temporary job. They couldn't hire me full time, but it was money. It was something. And I will say, you know, taking time off is easier for some than it is for others, especially financially, especially if you come from a background where you don't have, like I said, a safety net, where you're just like, I can take a year off and figure my life out. Maybe I'll go to Italy. And you're not that person. Most of us aren't that person.
Not my story.
Not a lot of our stories, trust me. So, taking time off, knowing that you have to have a plan to keep yourself afloat, but you can get yourself to where you want to go if you just work and work and work. Hard work beats talent every time. You just have to.
It's coming up, you know, you may not even know it, but it's coming up in just how you're talking to me. Like, you're talking about how they posted something, but nobody told you had to go find the post. Like, you have to look for it, you know what I mean? Like, and you have to be aware. And sometimes the opportunities come from, you know, I'm reminded of my mother telling me to move things out of the way in the refrigerator, because I would just open it up and look. And she's like, did you move the ketchup? And I'm like, no. And then I go back and move it. And it's there. And so it's like the opportunity is there, but you got to look. You got to actually look at the posted board. You got to check up on it. And it sounds like you did your homework, and you were kind of just that's just who you are. Now you have this kind of job. You got the internship. You led to the editing job. You're speaking to something in editing, in post-production. Nothing is set up where you're like, okay, I got this one editing gig. I'm working this for 30 years. You know what I mean? It's like, every job leads to the next. How did this kind of did you know that going into it, or was this something that you had to learn on the fly, and you knew that relationships were going to be very important for you? Well,
I started assisting in reality TV. Okay. And so that's the job I got out of grad school, out of the Bravo internship. I was an assistant editor on Keeping Up with the Kardashians. Okay. And that was taking place at a production company that was doing 1,000 other shows. So it was then up to me to make a name for myself there so that I can get on to the next show and not be unemployed after Kardashians was wrapped, you know? Right. So then it was one, knowing being the only Black female that I see at this company in post-production. There were people in the field who were like PAs or something every now and then. There were no Black executives. It was, and so I couldn't be like, oh, hey, sis, you know, like, let's talk to a Black executive. Like, sis.
Couldn't call them sis up there. Couldn't call them sis.
Everybody sis. Everybody looked the same. But knowing that, I knew that it's what we do to ourselves, but it's also important to know that we have to be better than everyone. I have to stand out from everyone in a good way. So I was the best damn assistant editor they had ever seen. And because of that, I was on The Real World right after that. And then I was on something else right after that. And then I was back on Kardashians. And then I was promoted to editor like right away. It took me like a year or two to be promoted to editor there. And then, and then I got nominated for some Emmys. And then it was like, wait.
I'm not going to let you say it like that. I'm not going to let you say it like that.
I'm trying to get to the point of
I had some, before this, we're filming, I had some breakfast. I can't just throw out casual, I had some breakfast. You know what I mean? I can throw that out. I had some breakfast. You can just throw out, yeah, I want some Emmys. You know what I'm saying? I got Emmys.
Yeah, but it was the moment like I think that was the moment where I was like, okay, if you really want to do scripted television, you have to like leave right now because you're getting really comfortable in this space. And then it was about what you're saying. It was about making those relationships and making sure I could leave the situation I was in to get into scripted, which is a whole nother beast.
I was going to ask you that. Now, you know, some people they're working primarily in reality, and then you're talking about getting into scripted. Yeah. What is the biggest difference? And then I know, you know, I think we both know people who work in this industry on both sides. It's not putting one above the other, but what is kind of the I guess credibility or something about working in scripted that you don't get when working in reality, and vice versa, maybe?
Yeah, I think that credibility is it's made up a little bit.
Okay, yeah.
But, to a certain extent, people respect people who work in reality TV because they know how hard it is to cut reality TV. But then people who don't actually know that think it's really easy to cut reality TV. They think it's like paint by numbers or something. And it's definitely not. Well, you know, some competition shows might be very formulaic. But when you are editing something that's like a docu-follow, something that something like Keeping Up with the Kardashians, and the product is seamless and it looks good, people don't know how hard it was to get to that point. Especially as an editor who, you know, you may have had a single camera for this scene, and then the other camera was just an iPhone. And then, you know, you're trying to make a whip pan happen. And then you're trying to make a dramatic moment out of something that was not dramatic at all. You're making people funny who are not funny at all. And so I think that a lot of what I learned in cutting reality TV has helped me in cutting scripted. I cut pretty fast because of working there. I understand story in a way that I don't think I would have had I not started in reality, because we had to create story. You know, the editors are writers and producers somewhat in reality TV. So, I mean, there's a certain credibility you get for just starting out in scripted, I think, but I don't know where that really comes from. Yeah,
no, I've heard it before. And so obviously just asking and talking to you, just seeing what it is. But I agree with you. I think there's respect that is deserved towards both. And it's really a preference. And then at the end of the day, too, you know, when it comes down to it and when you really get down to the nitty gritty, if you need to get that check and take care of yourself. And then when the next job comes and presents itself, then you go for that. But don't, you know, we're not.
No, there's no shame in like just. If you, because you need to get your hours anyway. You need to get your hours to join the union, which you can do easily in reality TV if you get hired. And there's absolutely no shame in collecting a check, doing something still you love to do. Maybe not on the show you love to do it on, but it's the job you love to do.
Right.
And you can do that, get paid, and have a plan that you're working on at the same time.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now you switched over and you got out of the reality. Now you're in the scripted world. Were you able to pick up that pretty quickly, and those jobs come? Were you able to get any mentors or do your working in scripted that you didn't have before?
Well, that was a friend of mine was assisting on a Netflix show, a scripted Netflix show, and he was like, "We need someone. We need a new assistant." And I know you were talking about, and that's the key. So I was telling everybody I wanted to do scripted, but he knew because I kept saying it. And so he called me and he was like, look, it's not a lot of money. And you would go from being an editor to being an assist, which you have to do to get into scripted. So I took it, and then it was like, okay, now I'm an assistant in scripted. And I used to edit, like I was editing for 7 years almost before I went back to assisting. And then a friend of mine was editing on 911 and she needed an assistant. And I had worked with her on Born This Way. I had worked with her on several other reality shows. And she was like, come with me, which a lot of people wouldn't do because we were peers. I was like, I'm going to go assist you. But I loved her. And I was like, of course. And I knew she was getting me into the place where I needed to be. Right. And so, you have to put things like ego aside and all that stuff aside and just do the job and get done what you need to get done so you can get where you need to go. So she ended up she's a great friend of mine, but she ended up being kind of a mentor for me, getting me in where I could. But at the same time, I was taking meetings with everyone I could, like, possible. Mm-hmm. That's how I met Denise Davis. I met her when they had just wrapped season 1 of Insecure.
Wow.
And I didn't work on Insecure until 3 years later. So I think it's just about, Denise knew me because I met with her and I was constantly emailing her with updates. This is what I'm doing now. This is what I'm doing. Now I'm on this. Now I'm on 911. Oh, I'm editing this Netflix show. Like, they bumped me from assisting to editing. So when it came time for 20s, she thought of me because I was in her emails and I had positioned myself so that she could suggest or what's the word? She could just recommend
you. No, I want to jump in there really quickly because you're touching on something else that's really good. Something you dropping gems. That's what they say on Clubhouse.
I'm rambling. You gotta cut me off.
Nah. You out here, you're killing it. But you touched on how you positioned yourself, and I think a lot of times, whether it's behind the camera or and whatever it is in entertainment, we expect people to kind of just give us the opportunity. And people that are working in those positions who are able to kind of bring you on, they can bring on people who are actually working and doing stuff. You can't bring on anybody that's being still. When you're moving, I can bring you on. So you were doing the work on your own and then just reminding them like, hey, I'm here. And it's like, it gives them more credibility. Like, hey, look what she was doing without us. You know what I mean? So she was able to kind of plug you and recommend you, and you had some credibility behind you. So that's more testament to who you are.
I say that all the time to people, like, nothing is owed. I don't feel like anything is owed to me. And I know that a lot of assistants get bogged down because they've been assisting for so long and they get frustrated and it's like, how can I get bumped up? And some of them do feel like, well, I've been doing this for such X amount of time. They kind of owe me. But I don't think that that's the case. I think you have to position yourself and make sure people know that they need you. Yeah, and it's about doing the work. Sometimes,
doing the work. Now, one thing we saw about you is that you have a mentor who was a friend of our show, Miss Terrell Shropshire. How has her relationship been with you? She was actually my brother's mentor when he was studying. He just started cold calling editors when he was editing, and she invited him into the edit bay when she was editing Jump in the Broom and other shows. It's like, how has her relationship impacted you? Because it seems like she's been doing this mentoring thing for a while.
Yeah, my relationship with Terry is fairly new still. Okay. I call on, it's mostly women, honestly. Yeah. Nina Erb, I also ask a lot of questions too, because she's very knowledgeable and she's very helpful when it comes to things that I just don't know anything about in this industry. Yeah. But yeah, Terry Lynn is someone I just cold emailed or called or something, and I was working on 40-year-old version, and I was like, I just have some questions that, like, I feel like you obviously can answer. And yeah, she was gracious, and that was my first feature that I've ever worked on.
Excellent movie, by the way. Excellent movie.
Thank you. I did the Netflix version, and the Sundance version was cut by someone else, but I did the one that was on Netflix. But I was nervous because it was about to be released soon, and I was just like, I need someone to tell me that I did this right. I was like at like Tacos to Madre or something, and that like timed her, and we talked, and she definitely calmed my nerves a little bit because she walked me through some of the issues I was having, with just cutting, pacing, and just trying to make sure I was getting all the funny. I was like, it's funny, like it has to be hilarious. But yeah, she's obviously very just gracious with her time, which I really appreciate.
No, and I agree with that. Sorry, and I will say you achieved your goal, because I was cracking up laughing. I was like, this, like, I started watching and you don't know what it's going to be about, and you're like, wait, what? Hey, this is funny. And so it was a great movie. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
We're not going to keep you forever, but just in terms of where the industry is now with everything with COVID, and just for you mentioned a couple of times already, but being a Black woman, in this industry? Is it hard? And what would you say to people who are trying to really like navigate into the industry now? Because it was already hard before COVID. Now it's like with everything being virtual, how has that changed the dynamic of your job and even future jobs for yourself?
Well, it's kind of a two-parter. I think that things are, I would say to someone, use all the resources that are available to you. When I was growing up, I couldn't just Google things, I couldn't just find out who worked on this thing. No one was coming to my school to talk. No, not even undergrad. No filmmakers were coming to the school to talk that I could go meet. And, I had no idea there were Black female editors until I had graduated grad school. I didn't know Terry Lynn existed. I didn't even know the editor of Friday was a Black man. I didn't know these things. And now it's so easy to find out all these things. You can Google us. You can, meet us. You can go to my website and send me a message. It's just, I would say use all of these things that are available to you so that you can sort of, create your community. I really love what Aisha Horn is doing right now. I think
that's our girl.
Yeah, I think that's so important. But yeah, and then, being a Black woman kind of in general is always a thing. Right. Not for us, because we're powerful and beautiful, and we
but it's for others.
It's for everyone else. It seems to be a thing. And I think the thing is usually forgetting that we're human beings. And and I say that to say that yes, I cut all things Black right now, and I love doing it. I love being in this industry and knowing so many Black people in it now. Black women, the Black women that I've worked with, Robin Thede, Issa Rae, Lena Waithe, they're all just so dynamic and smart, and they know what's good and they know what's funny, and they're making so many great moves. I'm just really excited to be a part of that. But I do think that the issue then becomes for, again, other people in the industry, is can she cut anything else? Because she's a Black woman. And if I was a white man cutting all these Black shows, no one would be concerned about, can she cut a superhero movie? Right. Of course I can. Why does everyone cutting a superhero movie have to look the same? That doesn't make any sense. But
right.
Logically, it doesn't make any sense. But I think people try to put you in a box a little bit. And I think as Black women, Black women editors especially, we do have to sort of figure out ways to break through that. And I don't mean going up to the gatekeepers and being can I have a job on this, please? I really do mean creating those moments for ourselves the way Gina and Terry did with the Old Guard. Just watching Terry be the one who edited that just blew my mind. That's exactly the type of movie I want to cut. And I've never seen a Black woman do it before. And thank God it was Terry. And now we can do it sort of opens that up for us, which she has been doing her whole career, obviously. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
You again. Yeah. First off, we just want to thank you for your time, but you touched it. And if there's no other way to kind of wrap it up, I think you just did. I think from this interview, if people didn't already have it before, there's going to be a lot of people that you're inspiring to kind of, as you continue to break open more doors. And that conversation that you kind of brought up about crossing over, that's something that we want to continue to try to see how we can really break in, because that is the next step to elevation. Daysha, what an amazing time. You said you were shy, kind of didn't have anything. We would never know. Where can we follow you and keep up to date with what you have going on?
My Instagram is @daybroadway. I have a website that's just dmbroadway.com.
All right, DM Broadway, you heard it here first. Well, thank you all again for tuning in to another episode of Posting Black. Be sure to follow us at Made for More Entertainment. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can find out more about Daysha and other Posting Black episodes. And stay tuned to everything that's going on with Made for More by following us on Instagram and Twitter as well.